Hi, I'm Kristen from Upcycle My Stuff. Today we are going to make no sew bunting. We're going to use lots of different scraps. You can use old t-shirts, old sheets, old ribbons, selvage edges, all sorts of stuff. And we're going to put it together and make it into a really cute, quick no sew bunting. So stick around. These are the things that you're going to need. So I have about a little bit over 1.5 meters of twine. Mine is green because I'm going to go for like a green and white kind of theme to mine, but you could use regular brown twine, or you could use a really long length of ribbon, whatever you like, no rules. Next, I have got a gigantic pile of scraps. So you can use whatever you have, basically, is the lesson here. So what I've got are little selvages. That's what this is as well, but this is a longer one. I've got, these are torn up sheets. Most of these I tore up thinking I was going to make a rag rug, and then we moved house and it just wasn't going to go with where I was going. So I had all these torn up fabric. Anyway, so this was like an old sundress. I think this was some trim from that. So you can use whatever you want. This, some more sheets and ribbon, whatever's gonna go with your color scheme. So I'll angle this down so you can see what I've got here. So I'm not gonna use all of this. Definitely not gonna use all of this because I'm only doing the sort of 1.5 meter length. But I wanted to have some options. And so you roughly want them to be like it does. So this one, for example, is a t-shirt material. So it's curled in on itself a bit. Can you see that? So when I cut it, it was a little bit wider. So let's see what it was. So about an inch and a half. And I think that's about right. So that's about 1.5 inches. The lace is a little bit less, it's about 1 inch. So it's not an exact science, it doesn't matter, but somewhere between 1 inch and 1.5 inches. These little selvages are much smaller. And I'm gonna show you how you can use these, because these are a little bit shorter than I would actually recommend you cut the strips themselves. So I'll come back to that. But basically I kind of use whatever you have kind of deal. So this is like a bit of my grandma's old pillowcase. This is a bit wider. So if you have wider ones like this, I'm probably gonna cut that in two in order to use it, rather than to use it quite this thick. So this is going to be like a kind of tassel style bunting, and so it's going to like hang in, let me show you, hang in sort of strips like that. So I think that's a little longer than we want, but we'll just see how long that is. I'm going to say, so that's 18, hang on, 18. Right, so that's about 24. So we probably want closer to about like 22 inches long or something like that. I mean, you can make it as long as short as you want. It kind of depends where you want to put it, but that's, I'm gonna do a semi-standard length, but I'm also gonna show you how you can vary those. So I'm particularly wanting to use up these selvages myself. So I'm gonna be guided by, so that some of these longer strips you're gonna loop, but these ones that aren't long enough to loop, we're gonna have all in one. So that's actually not bad. So I might just trim these a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to tape my twine down to my table. I'll show you that in a minute, and then we'll get started. Okay, so I've tried to angle this down. So I don't know if you can see, you can't really see the end of my table there. It's hard to move this, but anyway, I have basically taped on either end of the table. I pulled this kind of taut and taped it to like underneath my table. So we're not trying to actually put any pressure on it, but it's just to kind of keep it straight and so that you can work with it. Okay, so I'm just cutting some of my sort of wider scraps, even though these are the kind of short ones. So I've got some short ones that I want to use for this. So it's going to be a kind of mix and match technique for this. But so I'm putting my short ones here and just cutting up the ones that are a bit too wide for what I'm looking for. I am not measuring this. You can go ahead if you like. I'm just eyeballing what I think is roughly 1 inch to 1.5 inches. I could be way off, but it's fine. It's going to be fine. So don't stress about that sort of thing. You could also choose to iron your fabric if you want it to look a little bit less boho and a little bit more sort of polished, I guess, would be the opposite of that. So these are my short ones. So I'm going to make another pile over here of ones that I think are roughly the length for doubling. And I'm just pulling out the ones I know I want to use because I've got that huge pile of fabric, which I'm definitely not going to use all of. And then I'll see how they're looking together and what I want to add in. And if you don't have a rotary cutter, just use fabric scissors. You do not need a rotary cutter. Okay, that's how that patterned one. So I'm going to start with my whites because I know I want a lot of whites. So that's fine. You can also trim it at the end. I think that one's a bit long. Again, I'm not measuring it. Feel free to if you want to. And then I'm going to mix, so that was sheet material, and I'm going to mix the sort of sheet material with the t-shirt material. So now I'm just, I don't know if you can see that, I'm just laying down the ones, the next one onto the ones I've already decided the length of, and just chopping the ends off and putting it elsewhere. Just quicker. It's like you want this to be a quick, easy project. You don't want to be having to measure. So again, you could do this with scissors very easily as well. I'm just so used to using the rotary cutter. So don't think that you can't do it because you don't have a rotary cutter. You really wouldn't have that unless you sew all the time. So don't rush out and buy that. You don't need it. So let me just measure and see what length I'm actually cutting these because I am eyeballing them. I think it's a bit shorter than I originally said. So I'm doing like 18, 19 inches looks like for mine. But you, as long as you're somewhat consistent, it doesn't really matter what length you actually do. And if you find some that are a little bit shorter, decide if they're so short they need to go in this pile. Maybe that does actually. Or if they can go in the, so you're gonna have, you can have them all folded and you can have them all like this. I'm just doing a mix because that's what I have, and you can decide what you like when you see the rest of the tutorial. Okay, so it can be hard to tell sometimes if you have enough. It depends. So what you want to do really is measure where you want to put the bunting first of all, and then you need to have enough length on the end to tie it to wherever you're going to tie it to. So have a think about how am I going to attach this. Is there like a little loop on the top of your window if you have like a sash and case kind of window, or are you going to be putting a nail in the wall and tying it to that, and just kind of leave a length of twine on either end so you can do that. And then you normally want it to have a little bit of a dip. It depends if you like it straight, you can do that too. But so when you're measuring across, like hold your, maybe like if you hold the twine and let it dip to see how long you want it to be. So a little longer than you think is basically like, because you can always cut off the ends if it's too long, but you can't make it longer if you've made it too short, right? So yeah, so have a look at where you want to put it first. So these are my piles of scraps. So so we're just gonna have I may or may not use these all, and I might need to cut a few more, but eyeballing it, I feel like I've got enough for the length that I'm gonna do. So I've got a piece of twine that's about 1 3/4 meters long. So I guess I'm kind of aiming to have about 1.5 meters of that full of stuff. So I'm gonna start on one end and move this way. And I'm gonna be trying to sort of vary the colors and stuff. So this is what we're gonna start with. So it's just a piece of your scrap fabric or scrap clothing, scrap whatever. So fold it in half. You make, maybe angle that up a bit, sorry. Make a little loop like that. And then you put your loop underneath your twine and feed the ends through that. And then you just pull it tight. Obviously be careful not to pull your twine out of its tape and off of the table. Pull it as tight as you can like that. So you want it to look kind of like that. But that's my first piece. Okay, so I'm going to do a couple white first before I start adding color. But I think I'm going to go. So that's like a sheeting material. I'm going to vary that with the t-shirt material next. And you can make it as close as you want. I put like just a teeny tiny, not sure if you can see that, a teeny tiny gap. There, can you see that? In between the one and the other. That's kind of how I like it to look, but if you wanted it closer or further apart, you're tying knots so it will stay, so that is fine. If you are folding one that's got a print on one side and not on the other, you just kind of want to angle it so you're going to do it like this facing you, so that when you pull it out and over again, it's hard to show you here, you'll then get the color on the front. So now you're watching this kind of upside down, but let me show you. So there's my loop, like that. In they go, kind of. You almost want the non-pattern side to go in the loop like that, facing away from you. And then you're going to pull it tight. And then when you drop it down, the pattern is facing out. So you're kind of looking at it on the table, the way it's going to look when you have it hanging. So that's the idea. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to add now is one of these pieces that's a bit shorter, so it's not going to loop for me, right? So I am going to tie it on like this, and I'm going to put it, the little short end here. You're basically just tying it up, but what I'm trying to do is keep the little tassel down. So I don't really want it to go up this way. So I'm going to try and put it down here. You won't see it once it's all hanging up, but I personally like it to kind of almost hide behind that one. So it's just like the one tassel of color there. And I'm going to go for another looped one next. And again, you don't have to do the shorter ones, and you don't have to do the looped ones. You can do whatever combination you like, or just one of them. So we're making a loop, putting the loop underneath the twine, putting the ends through the loop, pulling it tight, and shimmying it forward like that. And then we're just eyeballing what colors we want to add when, right? So you can make like a rainbow one, or pink and white, or just your favorite colors, or totally random scrappy one. I always tend to go for some sort of a color theme, but it's kind of up to you. And these will move a little bit. You can slide them along. So even once you've got it all finished, you can still separate them if you want, but this will give you an idea of how much you probably need. So I'm going to go with this lacy one next. And here's the bunting all finished and hanging on my mantelpiece. I did give it a bit of a haircut at the bottom for the bits that were a bit too long, but it's up to you how precise you want to be about that. I'm pretty happy with it. If you like videos like this, don't forget to subscribe, click the bell for notifications, like the video, and do leave me a comment if you've got a question about this project or you want to ask to see a particular type of project in future. I'd love to hear from you. Hope to see you soon.